It was one of those crisp, late autumn evenings where the city's skyline sparkled in contrast to the growing darkness. The streets buzzed with activity, people hurrying home, bundled in their coats as the cold crept in. Emma, however, was in no rush. She sat behind the wheel of her sleek black SUV, waiting for the red light to change, gazing at the world through her tinted windows. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw her. A woman, huddled on the sidewalk, clutching a small child. Her clothes were worn, her face etched with fatigue. There was something in the way she sat, shoulders slumped, that pulled at Emma in a way she hadn't expected. Emma's hand hovered over her phone, about to call her assistant and complain about the long day, but she stopped herself. Someone needed her more. Before she knew it, Emma was pulling her car to the side of the road. Without even thinking, she stepped out and approached the woman. "Excuse me," Emma said, her voice calm but firm. The woman looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "What do you want?" the woman asked, her voice hoarse, clutching her child tighter as if expecting trouble. Emma knelt down beside her, not caring about the chill seeping through her designer coat. "I want to help," she said simply. The woman, Tasha, stared at her bewildered. She was used to people passing by, maybe throwing a coin or two, but never stopping, never offering anything beyond pity. She had fallen on hard times. A series of events beyond her control had left her homeless, with no job and nowhere to go. All she had left was her daughter Faith and the cold concrete beneath her. Emma didn't know why she felt compelled to act. Maybe it was the child's innocent eyes, or the way Tasha's exhaustion mirrored a weariness she'd been hiding for years, despite all her success. But Emma did something that would change both their lives forever. She offered them a place to stay. Tasha sat in the back seat of Emma's luxury SUV, her daughter Faith asleep on her lap. The soft hum of the engine and the warmth from the heater calmed her nerves, but her mind raced. How had she gone from a cold sidewalk to the back seat of a car that probably cost more than she'd ever made in her life? She didn't even know this woman, and yet here she was, trusting her with her child. A sense of unease mixed with cautious hope stirred inside her. Emma glanced in the rearview mirror, noticing the tension in Tasha's posture. "We'll be at my place in about 15 minutes. It's not far. You don't have to worry. I've got a guest house where you and your daughter can stay for as long as you need." Tasha nodded, though the knot in her stomach didn't loosen. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, her voice soft, barely audible over the sound of the car's engine. Emma hesitated. She didn't have a clear answer, at least not one that would make sense out loud. "I saw you and I just knew I had to do something," she said finally. "I've been blessed with a lot in my life. It's time I started sharing that." Tasha didn't reply, but something in Emma's words touched her. For the first time in months, maybe years, she allowed herself to feel a flicker of hope. Could this really be the break she needed? Or was this just another fleeting moment of kindness that would dissolve like so many before? Emma's guest house was more like a small mansion. Tasha had never seen anything like it. High ceilings, modern furniture, and a kitchen larger than her entire old apartment. Faith's eyes widened when she saw the soft, plush bed in the room Emma had prepared for them. "Mama, it's so soft," she whispered, bouncing lightly on the mattress, a smile spreading across her face. "Go ahead, sweetheart," Tasha murmured, brushing a tear from her cheek. "It's all yours." As Faith drifted off to sleep, Tasha sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small child who had been her only source of strength through these tough times. Could she really allow herself to relax, to trust that this wasn't just a dream? She lay down beside Faith, feeling the exhaustion finally catch up to her. Her thoughts swirled as sleep claimed her, the hope battling with her fears. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, Tasha's life began to stabilize. Emma had not only offered her a place to stay, but a job at one of her boutiques. Tasha, having worked in retail before, quickly found her rhythm. Emma was impressed with her attention to detail, the way she interacted with customers, and the passion she brought to her work. Tasha was more than just an employee. She was someone Emma could trust. As Tasha grew more comfortable in her new routine, Emma found herself becoming more involved in her life. They shared meals together, talked about their pasts, and laughed at Faith's innocent antics. Yet, beneath the surface, both women carried unspoken burdens. For Emma, it was the hollow feeling that had haunted her for years, despite her success. She had built her empire with hard work and determination, but the personal sacrifices had left her feeling isolated. Her marriage had crumbled under the weight of her ambition, and though she had everything she could ever want, she often felt as if she had nothing at all. Tasha, on the other hand, was still plagued by the fear that this new life could vanish as quickly as it had appeared. She didn't like to talk about what had led her to that sidewalk, but Emma could sense there was more to her story. Tasha avoided any questions about Faith's father, changing the subject whenever it came up. And though she worked hard and did her best to smile, there were nights when Emma would see her sitting by the window, staring out into the darkness, her face drawn with worry. One afternoon, as they were closing up the boutique, Tasha's phone rang. The number on the screen made her heart drop. It was from a man she hadn't heard from in years, Faith's father. Her hand trembled as she answered, stepping into the back room. "Hello?" she whispered, keeping her voice low. "Tasha?" "It's me," the voice on the other end said, rough and familiar. I heard you're doing better now, that you've got a nice place for you and Faith." Tasha's stomach turned. He wasn't calling to check on them. He never had. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. "You know what I want. I need money. You owe me." Tasha's breath caught in her throat. She had worked so hard to distance herself from him, from the life she had left behind. He had always been manipulative, always using her to get what he wanted. Now, just when she was starting to rebuild, he had found her. "I don't owe you anything," Tasha hissed, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're done." But the man's laugh on the other end sent chills down her spine. "We're never done, Tasha. I'll be in touch." Tasha didn't tell Emma about the call. She couldn't bear the thought of dragging her into the mess she had escaped. But the fear lingered, an ever-present shadow in her mind. As much as she wanted to believe she was free from her past, it seemed determined to find her. Meanwhile, Emma noticed the change in Tasha's demeanor. She became more withdrawn. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and she often seemed lost in thought. One evening, as they sat in the kitchen after dinner, Emma couldn't hold back any longer. "Tasha, is something wrong? You've been different lately," she asked. Concern etched on her face. Tasha hesitated. She wanted to trust Emma, but she had always been too proud to ask for help, especially when it came to personal matters. "It's nothing, Emma. Just memories I'd rather not deal with." But Emma wasn't convinced. She reached across the table and placed her hand on Tasha's. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here," she said softly. "You've done so much for me, and I want to help if I can." Tasha smiled weakly, but inside, the fear gnawed at her. She wasn't sure how long she could keep her past from catching up to her, or how Emma might react if it did. Their bond grew stronger, but so did the tension. Emma could feel that something was about to unravel. Tasha's silence was too heavy, too full of secrets. And when the next phone call came, it would set off a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. It was a stormy evening when the second call came. Thunder cracked through the night sky as rain pelted against the windows of the boutique. Tasha had stayed late to finish inventory while Emma headed home to deal with some personal matters. The store was quiet, the soft glow of the overhead lights casting long shadows across the shelves. Tasha's phone buzzed again, but this time she felt an overwhelming sense of dread before even looking at the screen. The same number, Faith's father. She stared at it for a moment, the pit in her stomach growing deeper. With trembling hands, she picked up the phone and answered, her voice low and tight. "What do you want now? You think you can run from me, Tasha?" His voice was a sneer. "You think you can just disappear with my daughter and live in some rich lady's house like nothing ever happened?" Tasha's heart pounded in her chest. "She's not your daughter anymore. You walked out on us, remember?" Her voice shook, anger rising to the surface. "You don't get to come back into our lives just because you need something." His laugh sent a cold chill down her spine. "Oh, I'm coming back all right. I'm coming to take what's mine." I know where you are now, Tasha. It's only a matter of time. The line went dead before she could respond. Panic flooded her. He knew where she was. He had found them. She frantically dialed Emma, her fingers shaking as she tried to keep her breathing steady. The phone rang once, twice, but there was no answer. "Damn it, Emma!" Tasha muttered, her pulse quickening. She needed to get back to the guest house, needed to be there for Faith. She grabbed her coat and keys, but as she was about to leave, the boutique's door flew open. He was standing there, tall, broad-shouldered, his face twisted in anger. Faith's father, Marcus. "You didn't think you could hide forever, did you?" His voice was menacing as he stepped closer. Tasha's heart raced. She backed away instinctively, her eyes darting around the boutique, looking for an escape. "Get out," she said, her voice quivering but firm. "You don't belong here." Marcus's eyes gleamed with rage. "I belong wherever my family is. You and Faith are mine, Tasha. You don't get to walk away from me, not without paying for it." He lunged toward her, and before she could react, he grabbed her arm with a bruising grip. Tasha yanked back, adrenaline coursing through her veins, but he was stronger, pulling her closer, his face inches from hers. "You think this fancy life is going to save you?" he growled. "You think that rich woman can protect you?" Tasha's heart pounded in her chest as her mind raced. She needed to stay calm, needed to get away, needed to protect Faith. "Let me go, Marcus!" she shouted, trying to twist free from his grasp. But before she could make another move, the boutique's door swung open again. Emma, soaked from the rain, stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock at the scene unfolding before her. Without a moment's hesitation, she rushed forward. "Let her go!" Emma's voice was fierce, filled with a protectiveness that startled even her. She grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him away from Tasha. He turned toward Emma, surprised by her sudden intervention. "This is none of your business, lady," Marcus spat, his grip tightening on Tasha. "She's mine. This whole life she's living, it's a lie." Emma didn't flinch. Her eyes blazed with determination. "Tasha doesn't belong to anyone," she said, her voice steady. "And if you don't leave right now, I'll make sure the police handle this." Marcus hesitated, his eyes flickering between the two women. For a moment, Tasha feared he might lash out, but then something in his expression changed. He could see that Emma wasn't afraid of him. The power he once held over Tasha was slipping through his fingers, and he knew it. With a final venomous glance, Marcus released Tasha's arm and stepped back. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You think you can just get rid of me? I'll be back. And next time you won't have anyone to hide behind." He stormed out of the boutique, slamming the door behind him, leaving Tasha trembling and breathless. Emma rushed to her side, gently placing a hand on Tasha's shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice softer now, full of concern. Tasha nodded, though her entire body was shaking. I didn't think he'd find us," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He's never going to leave us alone, Emma. No matter what I do." Emma's expression hardened. "Then we'll make sure he can't touch you or Faith again." Her words were filled with resolve, but there was also a hint of fear that Tasha could sense. This situation had escalated far beyond anything either of them had expected. They left the boutique together, both women silent as they drove back to the guest house. When they arrived, Faith was fast asleep, blissfully unaware of the danger that had nearly reached their doorstep. Tasha stood by her daughter's bedside, watching her small chest rise and fall with each peaceful breath, a deep sense of guilt gnawing at her inside. "I thought I could keep her safe," Tasha whispered to Emma, her voice barely audible. "But I don't know if I can anymore." "You don't have to do it alone," Emma said softly, standing beside her. "We'll figure this out together." "You're not going to lose her." But as Emma said the words, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from over. Marcus was still out there, lurking, waiting for his chance to strike again. And when he did, they might not be so lucky. The next day, Emma wasted no time. She contacted a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and domestic violence cases, determined to put legal barriers in place to protect Tasha and Faith. Tasha, however, felt the weight of the situation growing heavier with each passing moment. Marcus wasn't someone who played by the rules. He never had. And even with legal action, she feared he would find a way to get to them. Days passed. And while Marcus didn't show up again, Tasha couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching, waiting for the right moment to make his next move. Then,
Hey there, quick message. Grab a paper, write down HeroKind Stories, our channel name. Come back soon, we've got incredible stories you won't want to miss.
the second twist hit harder than anyone could have imagined. It was a sunny afternoon when the unthinkable happened. Emma was at home, dealing with business calls, while Tasha and Faith went for a walk in the nearby park. Everything seemed calm, peaceful even. But as they walked along the tree-lined path, a black car pulled up slowly beside them. Tasha froze, recognizing the car immediately. Before she could react, Marcus stepped out, his eyes locking onto her. Fear shot through her like lightning. She grabbed Faith's hand, pulling her close, her mind racing with how to get away, but it was too late. "I told you this wasn't over," Marcus sneered, taking a step toward them. But this time, there was no boutique to hide in, no Emma to step between them. And then, just as everything seemed lost, Emma appeared, completely unexpected, arriving in her own car. And this time, she was not just defending. She had something more powerful in her arsenal than words. Emma had never driven so fast in her life. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she sped down the street toward the park. She didn't know how she'd had the instinct to come, to find Tasha and Faith. Maybe it was the gnawing feeling that had settled in her chest since Marcus's last appearance, or the dread she had felt earlier that day when Tasha and Faith had left for the park. Something had told her to follow them, and now, as she pulled up to the curb and saw Marcus looming over Tasha and Faith, that feeling hit her like a freight train. Without hesitating, she jumped out of the car, her eyes locked on the scene before her. "Leave them alone!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Marcus turned, his eyes narrowing in irritation. "You again?" he sneered, his gaze flicking between Emma and Tasha. "I told you this is none of your business." But Emma wasn't afraid of him. Not this time. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, holding it up. "I've already called the police," she said calmly, though her heart pounded in her chest. "They're on their way. And if you lay a hand on either of them, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." For a moment, Marcus hesitated, his bravado faltering. He hadn't expected Emma to show up, let alone stand up to him with such conviction. He took a step toward her, but Emma didn't back down. She stood her ground, her eyes blazing with a determination that made Marcus pause. "You don't get to scare them anymore," Emma continued, her voice steady. "This is over, Marcus. You have no power here." Tasha held Faith tightly, her heart racing as she watched the scene unfold. She had never seen anyone stand up to Marcus like that, and for a brief moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Then, in the distance, the wail of sirens pierced the air. Marcus's eyes flicked toward the street, where the flashing lights of a police car approached. His face twisted in frustration, and for a second, Tasha thought he might try to run. But instead, he glared at Emma, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath. "You think you've won? You'll regret this." The police car pulled up beside them, and two officers quickly stepped out. Marcus didn't resist as they approached him, though the hatred in his eyes burned as they handcuffed him and led him to the car. Tasha watched in stunned silence as the man who had terrorized her for so long was finally taken away. But it wasn't over for her, not yet. There were still legal battles to fight, still emotional scars to heal. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Later that evening, Emma and Tasha sat together in Emma's living room, the soft glow of the fireplace casting a warm light over the room. Faith was asleep upstairs, unaware of the drama that had unfolded earlier. "You didn't have to do that," Tasha said quietly, her voice filled with gratitude and disbelief. "You saved us." Emma shook her head. "You saved yourself, Tasha. I just helped." Tasha looked at her, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, Emma. You've done more for me and Faith than anyone else ever has. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Emma reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. "We're family now, and family looks out for each other." The word family hung in the air, filling the space between them with a sense of belonging that neither woman had felt in a long time. For Tasha, it was the first time she truly believed that she and Faith were safe, that they had found a place where they belonged. And for Emma, it was the first time in years that she felt her life had a deeper purpose than just business success. The weeks that followed were filled with legal proceedings. With Emma's financial backing and the help of a dedicated lawyer, Tasha was able to secure a restraining order against Marcus and begin the process of full custody for Faith. The threat of him coming back into their lives faded, though the emotional scars remained. But Tasha wasn't alone in facing them anymore. The bond between her and Emma grew stronger as they navigated the challenges together. Faith began to thrive, no longer living in fear, and Tasha started to imagine a future for herself that wasn't defined by survival, but by growth. Emma, too, found a sense of fulfillment in helping Tasha, realizing that wealth wasn't just measured in money, but in the relationships that truly mattered. One evening, months later, as they sat together in the backyard of Emma's estate, watching Faith play in the garden, Tasha turned to Emma with a smile. "You know," Tasha began, "I used to think that people like you, people with everything, didn't have to worry about anything. But I was wrong." Emma chuckled softly. "Oh, I've got my worries," she admitted. "But you've taught me something, Tasha, that the things we go through, the hard things, don't define us. It's what we do after those moments that matters." Tasha nodded, her gaze following Faith as she twirled happily in the grass. "I spent so long running from my past, trying to protect her, that I forgot there could be something better ahead." "You've given her that," Emma said softly. "And you've given yourself that too." For the first time in a long time, Tasha felt a deep sense of peace. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't alone. She had found a family, an unexpected, unlikely family, but a family nonetheless. And in that moment, as the sun set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of pink, Tasha knew that whatever challenges came next, she could face them. She wasn't afraid anymore. Thank you for joining us for this incredible story of love, resilience, and the power of friendship. If you found inspiration in Tasha and Emma's journey, make sure to subscribe to HeroKind Stories and share this video with more people who could use a little hope today. And don't go just yet. Another story is waiting for you. Click the video on your screen